many jokes in the future on that one. But I wanted to talk a little bit about both of our parents. I did not have the pleasure of knowing Les's parents, Merle and Ophelia Miller, but it seems to me that they were from the same mold as our parents, Don and Patty Olson. Because of Merle and Ophelia's open values on race and religion, they've left a mark on Indianapolis. In the 1940s, Merle was the first lawyer in Indianapolis to share cases and advice with the Jewish legal community. In the late 1950s, Ophelia called a publisher of the Indianapolis Star to send a photographer out to their home for a reception of the National Urban League. And as a result, for the first time, a picture was published in the Star of an African American as a guest at a party, not as a servant. Don and Patty, our parents, worked also to make differences in their community, make their state and their country a better place for the LGBT population. They'd be so pleased to know the progress in South Bend in this area, as well as the outcome of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We thank former Senator Evan Bayh and Congressman Joe Donnelly for listening to our parents and helping to fulfill the many goals that they have in ending discrimination of all kinds. Many of you are actively contributing to a better community. Some are contributing through elected office. Our parents would hardly approve. Our father loved the saying from Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I know that our parents, and I think I can speak for Les's too, would be very proud of both of you today. I didn't think I'd cry when I saw my brother's, or my dad's brother on the left walked in with me, and he would have been very proud of that today. But I know all of them would be proud of what both of you guys have accomplished in your lives, and now that you found each other and love and accomplished so much for your community together now. And congratulations to both of you.
Hi, I'm Kurt Les's brother-in-law, and I have the honor of my wife performing the ceremony today. I want to welcome all of you lucky enough to be here to share Amy and Les's wedding day. Les asked me to speak, but then he worried about what I would say. He's worried I will tease him or tell stories at his expense. Actually, I'm sorry I don't have more time to tell you more about this wonderful man. A few years ago, Amy decided to move from South Bend and begin living with Les here in Indianapolis. The family jumped at the opportunity to help Amy get here as soon as possible. Greg, Melinda, Terry, Ellis, Les, and I brought a 26-foot diesel box truck, 2 Suburbans and a trailer, and a lot of muscle to get Amy moved here to Indianapolis. After all, we knew then that she was home. We couldn't wait for Amy to move to Indianapolis. She was already family to us. Les, on the other hand, took a little bit longer to realize that Amy was the one. Les is smart, but he can be a slow learner in some areas. After Les's nearly fatal car accident 4 years ago, Amy was Les's triage care manager. Her love and loyalty were up to the task. Les, in his drug-induced coma, can be forgiven for not initially realizing how much she cared for him, but the rest of his friends and family knew. What makes this wedding day so important is knowing how important marriage and love are to Les and Amy. My daughter Kyle and her husband Dylan celebrated their 4th wedding anniversary on March 29th. Prior to his accident, Les had agreed to perform their wedding ceremony. Les performed that ceremony barely 6 weeks after his terrible car accident. On that day, he was green, feverish, sweating, and wobbling on his feet. But he did it. Les will do anything for his friends and family. Forget the fact that his face was green and his head was on the table while signing the wedding documents after the ceremony. That's true. He had promised Kyle and Dylan that he would perform the ceremony, and he was not going to let them down. How fitting that he has given his sister Terry, my wife, the honor of returning the favor by performing his wedding ceremony today. In December, Les told the family in Key West that he was going to propose to Amy at his maternal grandmother's house. To which we all said, "What took you so long?" That day is finally here, and we can't wait. And finally, Les, here's what I get a chance to put a little scare in you. I haven't forgotten to ask that most important insider's question. So Les, Chris, Terry, and a much younger Greg, when this question was first asked, my parting question to you, Les, is, what garage?
Well, good morning, everyone, and it is truly good to be here. I apologize for being a bit tardy. The flight was an hour and 10 minutes late, but it was for reasons that were a bit unusual and not altogether unhappy. The flight was going from Indianapolis to Washington, turning around and flying right back, and it was supposed to leave Washington at 8:45. As the flight was boarding here in Indianapolis, the co-pilot received a call on his cellular phone from his wife, whose water had just broken, for the birth of their first child. So the co-pilot literally got up, ran off the plane. Fortunately for those passengers, there was another co-pilot who was what they call deadheading to Washington, not intending to operate the plane, but was just a passenger. He stepped in for the co-pilot. That flight made it, but on arriving in Washington, they had no co-pilot for the flight returning to Indianapolis, so we had to wait more than an hour for them to find a first officer to fly us back. So there is a new Hoosier here in Indianapolis today, and that is a happy thing, but I apologize, Les, for being just a bit tardy for this important day for you and Amy. Now, I want to begin by congratulating Amy and Les in that order. Amy, you must be a saint. Les, like me, you've outmarried yourself, so I congratulate you for that. I also want to say that I'm looking around the audience here, seeing so many friends who I've had the privilege of working with for so many years. Many of you in this building or on the path to this building. The faces are familiar. I think I see a little more gray hair. I frankly see a little more gray hair when I look in the mirror. But it does remind me that the important thing about life is that it's a journey. The destination for which is the same for all of us. What really matters is what you do along the way and who you make the journey with. And so I want to thank all of you for having done me the honor of making the journey with you. No one is more important to that than our friend Les Miller here today. And Les, I want to just say what an honor it is to be here with you and Amy with you. I would never have had the privilege of serving this building if it hadn't been for our friend Les Miller. I don't know of anyone who is more loyal, harder working, or with a bigger heart than Les Miller. I would never have been Secretary of State, or Governor of the state, or Senator representing us in Washington, or any of those other things if it hadn't been for Les Miller. He was literally there at the beginning. He was there at our little condominium at 307 East St. Clair when a small group of us first gathered to talk about perhaps getting involved in public life. He was there on my first trip over to my hometown of Terre Haute, Indiana. We had such humble beginnings. We were driving the Buick Skylark. We called it, the car was in such bad shape, we called it the Sky Dog. And it didn't have a gas cap. We had to stuff a rag in the gas tank to keep the gas from evaporating. And we drove over to Terre Haute. And I thought here I was born in Terre Haute. Our family, 5 generations from Terre Haute. I thought I was going to be like the prodigal son returning. Well, my good friend, Pete Chalos, who ended up being one of my staunchest supporters, writing op-ed pieces in the Terre Haute Star Tribune, defending me against all sorts of attacks and so forth, informed me that he was not going to be for me in the Democratic nominating convention, the state convention. He was going to be for Jim Wells, who was the sheriff here in Marion County. And I proceeded to go to a couple of the other leading citizens in Terre Haute. They were going to be for Jim Wells because the mayor was for Jim Wells. And as I recall, Les, I think it was Fred Nation, Bill Haley, and maybe Jerry Kearns were going to be for us. But as it turned out, that was enough. But Les was literally on that first trip. He was with me as we would go around the state of Indiana to counties large and small, speaking at JJ dinners, and we literally would carry a hat in the back of the car. And I guess if I had spoken well enough, the county chairman would announce to the assembled, "We are now going to pass the hat," on behalf of Evan Bay and his friend Les Miller. Les would oversee the hat being passed. People would put in $1 or $5 or $10. We then graduated to a cardboard box, and Les would stand physically at the exit to wherever I was speaking so that people could not get by him without leaving a love offering in the box. And so we would raise $100, $200, and that would pay for gas. Les was with me when we made a 4-hour drive to Boonville, Indiana, to raise a grand total of, I think, $56. And of course, I was doing the math on the way back. I was, not terribly happy about the situation. I was doing the math, and I was subtracting for gas money, subtracting for the stop at McDonald's, and then doing the math on how much we had raised per hour, 4 hours down there and back. And for those of you who are familiar with my frugal ways, you know that Les was there to calm me down, and we got up at 7:30 the next morning and continued on with the campaign. Les has asked me to share a few other memories. I remember that Les was with me. I think he drove me to the county courthouse in Shelby County. I guess this is a little more topical now. I had been put on trial by actually we had, I guess, initiated the lawsuit, but to determine whether I was constitutionally eligible to run for governor, and had maintained my domicile in the state of Indiana for 5 years. And for all those of you who are wondering, I'm the only, I think, living Hoosier who has a 4-0 unanimous decision. The only Democrat in the Supreme Court at that time, Justice Brewer, recused himself. So I have a 4-0 Supreme Court decision by 4 Republican appointees attesting to the fact that, yes, I am a certifiable Hoosier. And for those of you who read about these things these days, we do own a home here in Indianapolis. We vote from our residence. We pay taxes on our residence. We pay utilities on our residence. We occasionally stay at our residence. So to kind of get that out of the way, Charlie White notwithstanding. In any event, I think Les drove me down to the courthouse, where I took the stand and under oath and to undergo cross-examination from the other attorney about this and that and other things. So Les has been with me every step of the way. There are a few things, however, that do stick out in my mind. One was a trip we made to northern Indiana, and among his other many virtues, and Amy, I don't know if you'll ever have the pleasure of this, because I don't think Les, you don't fly anymore, Les, do you? Oh, you fly a little bit. Well, have you been up in a plane, Les? Well, you're a combat survivor. You are a brave woman. Well, in any event, back in the day, Les would have a part ownership interest in a very modest 4-seater plane. You'd have to crawl in over the wing to get into the plane, and then you'd either sit up front, or there were a couple seats in back. And we did this because it saved time and it also saved money. And on one of our trips up to northern Indiana, it had all gone well. But we began to fly back, and the weather was really bad. I mean, we were up there, and I think you got your nighttime license and bad weather license when we were doing our thing together. Before then, he would do something called scud running, where he'd fly below the clouds and try and dodge the antenna for the radio and TV stations and that kind of thing. It's the kind of thing you do before you have children, but not afterward. In any event, we're coming back from northern Indiana, and it looked like Zeus was hurling lightning bolts. And you can see this off in the distance, the lightning just coming down, and we're flying right into this thing. And I was exhausted. Very often I was, just burning the candle at both ends, and so I would sleep on the plane. So even looking at all this, I finally said, wake me up, Les, if you needed me. So I put my head in the window, and it's just him and me. And I fall asleep. Well, out of a dead sleep, the next thing I know, there's a sharp elbow in my side. And I kind of wake up and start, I said, what is it? And he says, take this. And he thrusts a flashlight into my hands. I said, what's going on? He says, the electrical system has gone out. You have to shine this on the instruments so I can fly the plane. Well, I say, well, I think that would be a good thing to do. So I'm sitting there shining the light on the instruments so he can kind of pilot the plane, and he has decided with the electrical system going out, flying into a thunderhead, it's probably a good idea if we land. And so the next stop between us and Indianapolis that he could put down in was, I think, Kokomo. So we sat down in Kokomo, and he makes the successful landing. You know, I get out and say a little prayer. You know, I think it's miraculous we've been saved. He runs on inside, and I think he calls Bill Stinson to see if Bill will come up and get us here in the dead of night. I don't know what hour it was. There are only so many people you can call under circumstances like that. And Bill was a good enough friend, so he calls Bill, and Les is in taking care of that. Here we are up in Howard County, and I'm out standing by the plane. And one of the guys who's working there at the Kokomo airport comes out and asks me if we need any gas. And I said, well, I don't know, you ought to ask my buddy, you know, it's his plane. And this guy kind of looks at the plane we're flying in, and he looks over at me and he says, this is a pretty nice little plane. You built this yourself? We did a lot more driving after that trip. In any event, I have so many fond memories. We flew into all kinds of places together, and I remember one time we landed in southern Indiana. We landed on a grass strip, and I can't remember whether Dick Darko was with us or who, but there's a cornfield on one side, and Les is with me, but Dick is flying, because I think it was Dick, but we're landing on this grass strip, and Dick is just honed in on this strip. Well, that's down there in coal mining territory. There was this humongous truck. If you can imagine a coal truck, probably 5 times the size of a normal semi, it's coming along the road that runs perpendicular to the strip. Dick doesn't see this thing. He's locked into the strip. Well, this truck is coming along. We would have made a mosquito on the side of this strip. In any event, I think we finally got Dick's attention, and he pulled up at the last second. We didn't know the past. In any event, the other story I will tell, and then we'll get on with the rest of the service because I don't want to do that here today. I'd been elected governor and was running for re-election. And one of the leading citizens down in Madison, in Jefferson County, had agreed to hold a fundraiser on my behalf. And he was a doctor down there, and you know, hey, no big deal. It's great. The doctor's holding a fundraiser for us, so the invitations all went out, and we're all looking forward to going and so forth. Well, unbeknownst to us, the doctor had decided to leave his spouse of 20-something years and his 3 children, and had taken up with one of his nurses. Okay, this happens. Simultaneous to that, Playboy magazine has decided to publish